clean British energy and technical excellence colleges, training our kids in the skills we need. If you think work should pay fairly, that practices like zero-hour contracts and fire or rehire should be scrapped, and that we need a solution for sectors like care that isn't just exploiting immigrants on low pay. If you want lower migration and higher wages, then I say again, this is what a changed Labour Party will deliver. You won't get it from a Tory fifth term. Only a change of government can bring change to our country. We will serve you. Look around your country. We need you. Britain must come together. I believe in this country. I believe in its spirit. I believe in its people, in its businesses, in its communities. But most of all, I believe that if the British people see respect and service in their politics, then they will commit to the national mission of renewal. So if we are privileged enough to win the next election, we'll walk together with a new mission to get Britain building again, take back our streets, switch on great British energy, get the NHS back on its feet and tear down the barriers to opportunity. A Britain where hard work is rewarded, aspiration is back, communities have more control, politics serves your interests, and where together we can say, in a cry of defiance to those who write our country off, Britain can, Britain must, Britain will get its future back.
Please welcome European Director of Bloomberg, Konstantin Kotzias.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. As you just heard, my name is Konstantin Kotzias. I'm a European Director at Bloomberg, and we're delighted to be supporting the Winter Business Conference and to be joined by so many Shadow Cabinet Ministers, policymakers and senior business leaders from across the UK. And what a setting here at the Oval Cricket Ground. And as it's my job, I couldn't resist the cricket analogy, to open the batting for the leader of the Labour Party, Sir Keir Starmer. And having just seen the England team dazzle against India in the cricket, we're all hoping Sir Keir will continue his Bazball approach to business, positive, engaged and delivering results. Look, at Bloomberg, we firmly believe in the importance of bringing business and policymakers together to facilitate dialogue on the issues that matter, and it's been a super productive morning of discussion and debate, so thank you for that. More dialogue between our politicians and business leaders can only be a good thing, and having facilitated some of those discussions at Bloomberg, we're proud to be a part of that. This conference comes at a critical time. Our country, as we've been hearing this morning, faces a tough set of economic challenges: inflation, interest rates, supply chain squeezes and the ongoing energy uncertainty. But despite all of this, one thing that is absolutely clear is the critical role business must play on the UK growth agenda. After all, it's business, not government, that will provide the jobs, growth, goods and services to help drive our economy. I've seen at first hand the hard work Keir and the Shadow Cabinet have put into their engagement, and I'm impressed with the relationship the party continues to build with business. It's so important. Thank you to all of the Shadow Labour Party. Sir Keir Starmer. Great to see you. Good luck with the speech. Thanks again. Take care. Good luck.
Thank you very much, Con, for those words. Thank you for all your support and your friendship now over many years. And can I start by thanking Bloomberg for sponsoring this event. It is really great to be here. Thank you all for coming, for being in this hall with us. And what an impressive room this is. A testament, I think, to the changes we've made over the last 4 years. I mean, just for a moment, if you'll indulge me, I'd like you all to cast your mind back to 2019. let's imagine that you were invited to an event like this, a Labour business conference, before any of the changes to our party had taken place. The question is, would you go? Would you, as a wealth creator, feel that your ambition, the vital role you play in our economy, commanded the respect it deserves? Now, don't worry, they're called rhetorical questions for a reason. And this isn't an audience participation event, so I'm looking around the room, put your glitter away. But doesn't that thought just show the scale of the journey that we've been on? The depth of the changes we've made to transform the Labour Party's relationship with business. It's something that I take immense pride in. This has always been one of the key tasks in my project to return Labour to the service of working people. Because we know that in the real world, working people want success as well as support. They want a government capable of matching their aspirations, understand completely that private enterprise is how we pay our way in the world. So all the hard work that's taken us to this point, it's vindication, a recognition of that guiding belief, not just that Labour could be the party of business, that Labour should be the party of business, that now also, 4 years on, Labour is the party of business. But this project has to be more ambitious than changing the culture of my party. You've heard me say many, many times over the last 4 years, I want a partnership with business. But that word, partnership, has to express more than just a good relationship. Frankly, that should be par for the course. So look, everything we do is driven by a determination to provide the businesses, communities and people of this nation with the conditions to succeed, to set a direction. 5 national missions the whole country can get behind, and then bring people together to achieve them. That's the job of government, as I see it, an understanding that we serve the country while you drive it forward. That is what national renewal means. And I know you stand ready to join us. I also know that the caricature that British business only serves the shareholder interest is lazy and out of date. In fact, one of the things I draw great hope from is the determination I see from the countless business leaders I've met to serve the national interest. A pride not just in the contribution you already make, but what else you could achieve if you had a government that matched your ambition. That's why, as we've drawn up our plans for Britain, we haven't just opened our doors. We've taken decisions together as equal partners in the venture of national renewal. Your fingerprints on every one of our 5 missions. But nonetheless, for this partnership to endure, it's not enough just to see the country and its challenges through the same eyes. We have to start getting things done. And that will mean new expectations on your business. Because if we want a Britain where every worker enjoys dignity at work, if we want a country that invests in its infrastructure and its people, if we want a Britain where wealth creation comes from every community, then that can't come from a change of government alone. We all have to change, business included. So look, this is what this document that we're launching today represents. A Labour plan for business, a partnership for growth, with a clearly defined and measurable goal, the mission, that we can achieve the highest sustained growth in the G7. A target we set out not because it's easy, I think we can dispense with that accusation, but precisely because it is hard. and because we want everyone involved to understand the destination. And look, we actively want our progress to be tracked. We embrace the harsh light of accountability. This is how you learn and adapt when faced with a long-term challenge. It's also a plan that comes with a clear purpose, because we aren't agnostic about the sort of growth we want. Our mission commits us to raising the living standards of working people in every community. And that means we'll have to do the hard yards, roll up our sleeves, get underneath the bonnet and fix the unprecedented stagnation in British productivity. Seriously, I don't think you can overstate what the British people have been through in the last 14 years. It's not just the permanent cycle of crisis. There is something much more fundamentally broken in the way this country creates wealth. I mean, a decade of lost wage growth, halfway down the road to another one. An economy with weak foundations that, even in the calmer moments, can't provide the security working people need to look forward. Something which doesn't just hold back our potential, but also rips up the contract, the values that keep our country together. A sense that if you work hard and play by the rules, you will have a chance in Britain. The future will be better for your children. That's why we need nothing less than a decade of national renewal. Each one of those words is important. Decade, because frankly, that is how long it may take. National, because we need the contribution of every citizen in this country. And renewal, because this can't be done with a few fixes, a policy tweak here and there. We need to go beyond the sticking plasters, find the long-term cure that will allow us to face the future. That's why today we launch this new plan, this new purpose, this new partnership, with 5 priorities we can unite behind, 5 steps we can take together to begin our walk towards a Britain with its future back. Step 1, we'll get Britain building again. We'll take on the blockers that hold a veto over British aspiration. Rip out the red tape in our planning system that stops you building the future Britain needs. Take the tough decisions that will get the infrastructure you need. The warehouses, grid connections, roads, tunnels, labs, built more quickly and at a better price. We will also build 1.5 million new homes for your workers. And with that, a rich prize for your business. A path to a stronger skills base. A happier workforce. More dynamism. More demand. More growth. Step 2. We'll kickstart a skills revolution, because a future must be trained as well as built. Now, you told us the system doesn't work. There's not enough coordination, too much chasing the ball, nobody thinking about the skills we need tomorrow. And we've listened. That's why we'll set up a new national body, Skills England. You told us the apprenticeship levy is too inflexible. Won't let you train your own workforce in the way that you need. And we listened. That's why we'll create a more flexible growth and skills levy instead. But as with any partnership, there is also challenge. Because for years I've heard businesses complain about the skills system, about the quality of the courses at their local colleges. So we're giving you the tools to do something about it. That's what our technical excellent colleges are all about. So I say in all seriousness, get into them, help design the courses, drive up the standards, and in doing so, help ground our education system more firmly, not just in young people's aspirations, not just in the needs of your business, but also in the pride, the pull of the badge on the shirt, the ambition you feel when building a lasting legacy for your own community. Step 3, we'll make work pay. 0-hour contracts, scrapped. Fire and rehire, finished. A genuine living wage. And I want to be crystal clear about this. We are going to level up workers' rights in a way that's not been attempted for decades. And that may not please everyone in the room or the wider business community. But nobody can doubt that our labour market is at the heart of our challenges on productivity. A clear reason why the wealth we create fails to generate economic security. That's not just an argument about social justice. It's also about growth. Because the growth we need cannot come from driving down the terms and conditions of the British people. That is not a pathway to sustained productivity improvement. In fact, if anything, it distorts our economy with perverse incentives on things like investment in technology. I accept this may be a challenge for some businesses, but we will work with you at every stage of rolling our reforms out. And we will back you with a different deal. We will cut NHS waiting lists to make your workforce healthier. We will put a plan in place to make it more highly skilled. We will provide better mental health access, more affordable housing. This is a different model, pro-worker and pro-business. Step 4, we'll back you with the tools to transform the role of investment in our economy. A new industrial strategy that can maximise our distinctive strengths. Life sciences, digital technology, financial services, the creative industries, car manufacturing, clean power. A new national wealth fund ready to work hand in glove with you to rebuild our country, with public investment crowding in many multiples of private investment, sharing both risk and reward by giving the British people a stake. And finally, step 5. In some ways, the most important step of all. The foundation it all rests upon. A commitment to always put economic stability first. Now, Rachel spelt this out very clearly this morning. We cannot and we will not allow public spending needs, however important, to threaten the stability of our finances. We have seen where that leads under this government with total clarity. It is the definition of a false economy, and working people pay the price. But stability, as you've told us time and time again, is not just an exercise in damage control, it's also an opportunity. I go back to what I said a few moments ago. Our job is to provide you with the conditions to succeed. And when you invest in your business, you invest in this country. So we want a competitive tax regime for business investment. That's why we've backed permanent full expensing. But we also know that this regime needs to be stable. In this Parliament alone, we've had a new headline corporation tax in 2021, 2022 twice, and then in 2023, yet more changes to the regime with the end of the super deduction. In fact, all told, there have been 26 changes to corporation tax since 2019. I think that's more changes than Chancellors, although it's hard to keep up. I was at an event the other day where the CEOs were actually vying as to who'd had the most changes of minister over the last few years. But seriously, you know this chaos has a cost. You know that instability has a chilling effect on business investment. Time and again, you tell me It's the chopping and the changing, the sticking plaster politics, the growing concern that our government will rip up its international commitments that's holding back investment in our country. So that's why we've committed today to a stable corporation tax rate. No changes. And so, for the whole of the next Parliament, with Labour, you will know exactly the return on your investment in this country. Because at the end of the day, when the big questions that echo around rooms like this are raised, where does our money go? Where do our jobs go? Where does our investment in a better future go? I want the answer that comes back to be a resounding, why not Britain? A country building again, growing again, believing again that hard work will be rewarded, aspiration will be backed, working people can be successful, because we have a long-term plan to get Britain's future back. A partnership for growth. British business driving our country forward with the Labour Party on your side, walking together with you towards a decade of national renewal. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I think
bad. Well, look, this way. Very good now. Good. Good. Yeah. So I'm Paula Reynolds, and I chair the board of National Grid. And so I'm going to ask Sir Keir a couple of questions. Then we've recruited a few people from the audience with their questions, a cross-section of industry. Not going to open it up to all of you, not that it wouldn't be delighted to answer many questions, but it's a big room and it would be a bit awkward. So we'll just ask a few, and then maybe I'll do a wrap-up of you at the end.
Very good.
At the end. And so at National Grid, we're in the infrastructure business, so I am sort of allowed one question that would maybe relate to my own business, and it's...
And then I'll have a few questions for you about the grid.
Afterwards, I'm not good. You've said on a number of occasions, and of course including part of your pillars of renewal, that government needs to act differently, needs to remove barriers to expanding infrastructure. And in a moment of colorful language, you've even said you wanted to bulldoze those obstacles. But as a lawyer, you know down at the detailed level that underneath all of that, there's a lot of permafrost that would have to be bulldozed here. The framework of public participation, environmental protection, acre-by-acre consenting, judicial review. So the question is, on a serious level, what are some of the things that you would intend to do to really try to remove these barriers that prevent infrastructure of all sorts from being expanded?
Well, look, I'm really glad you started there, so thank you very much, because I think this is a really, really important question. Because as I tried to set out in the short speech I just gave, the model we want to move to is a partnership model, the like of which we haven't seen before in this country. And if you're going to have a partnership model, I think it's really important that as partners we're honest about what we're trying to achieve, which is why I wanted business fingerprints on our missions, because I didn't think that we could ask business to partner with us on a mission if business didn't think we were picking the right mission, but then to understand the different roles. So I don't think government should try to do what business can do, because I think business does it better. We shouldn't suck it up and try to run things from the centre. We should let business do the work where they are the experts. But equally, I'm not expecting business to do what government can do, because government can pull different levers to business. And therefore, we say to business, it's not an invitation, it's an ask, to join us on these missions, work with us towards these strategic goals that will change our country. I think business in return is entitled to say, OK, Keir, well, in which case, do you understand what's standing in the way, and are you prepared to do the hard yards of getting those barriers out of the way? Planning is one of the barriers that comes up, I think, at pretty well every discussion we ever have. That's whether it's an infrastructure project. We're really bad at infrastructure projects in this country. They always take too long. They go over budget. We're much slower than other countries. But also when it comes to building houses, etc. So we have to deal with what gets in the way. The first thing in the way, in many respects, is planning, and we've therefore got to reform planning. And we're really determined to do this tough stuff. I think there is stuff we can do about the national framework to start with. It has to be much clearer. The objectives has to be changed. So we made much less challengeability as we go down this road, to make sure that we can get these infrastructure projects off the ground much more quickly. So yes, that means that we've got to take on some of the challenges along the way, those that will stand in the way of change. There are always going to be people who stand in the way of change. Whenever you try to change something, will be somebody who says, oh no, we've always done it this way, you can't change things. We've got to bulldoze through that, because I think otherwise we're never going to get the change that we need in this country. One of the formative conversations I had pretty early on, 2 or 3 years ago, was with someone about how quickly I could get a wind farm built onshore, if we needed one, to get to clean power by 2030. And I was told to build the wind farm would take 2 years, but you wouldn't be able to use it for 13. Because the grid would take time, the planning would take time, and we'd 13 years. We can't hit our targets if it takes 13 years to get a project that's 2 years to build to finalisation. So we've got to have a real determination here to push through on this. We will try and do some of the early stuff, by the way, without too much legislation, because I don't want to get bogged down. We're going to inherit, I think, if we are privileged enough to come into power, a very broken economy, a broken set of institutions and public services. So we've got to hit the ground running. And so we will get on with it from day one. Thank you. But we do need to talk about the grid.
I look forward to it. So you said the magic words of government speak, which is industrial policy or industrial strategy. And there's the industrial strategy that's being practiced in the United States, which is throw a lot of money at something. But then there's the industrial strategy of China, which is a long-term view of where a country can have a first mover advantage to change the trajectory of investment and growth. So when you talk about industrial strategy, you threw out a number of sectors. But might you highlight the several where you think some of the greatest potential is for the economy to deliver sustained and meaningful growth?
Yeah, I mean, industrial strategy is hugely important. I think everybody in the room would agree with that. Almost every business leader I've spoken to has put on their list of things that need to change industrial strategy. And we're not in a good place at the moment. Theresa May did have an industrial strategy, which wasn't bad, actually. You will have all seen it and perhaps worked with it. I think I'm right in saying if you go to the government website now and go to the portal for industrial strategy, you will see the words archived. And that is it. There isn't one. It's gone off to the library forever. So we've got to build industrial strategy. We can't have a partnership without it. It needs to be given a sort of an infrastructure, and we need a council, I think, for the industrial strategy. It needs to be, I think, in law so that it doesn't come and go, as we've seen in the last few years. And I think we also need a version that is capable of doing the granular work sector by sector, because there will be different demands depending on the different sectors in which you are all working and you're all operating. So that's the framework. I think that's vital, by the way. I think it's much needed. I don't think the framework on itself gets you home on an industrial strategy because it's about a mindset. It's about how do you actually work as partners. And so this industrial strategy, to take any sector, would be working with business to say, what's the journey that, or the pathway to the goal we're trying to achieve? And what are the pinch points? Where does the government need to do something? Is it early funding? Is it changing the skills? Is it making sure that there's a guaranteed purchase at this point on the process? Is it de-risking a bit of it? And there'll be different versions of this discussion going on, so that what government does is agile, not clunky, that where we're putting investment, whether it's in skills or money, into a project, we know why we're doing it and we're putting it in the right point for business to say, that's the point you need to help us on the journey to allow us to complete the journey. So that's the extent to which, or the depth of industrial strategy as I see it. It's going to be a lot more intense, a lot more hard work, I think a lot more productive, but what we won't be having is an industrial council that meets every quarter with coffee and croissants. Everybody says the same thing as they said 3 months ago. It's duly noted, and we come back 3 months later for the same conversation. I've had too many of those discussions in my life, and I think probably all of you have as well. This is sleeves rolled up industrial strategy that I'm absolutely convinced from my discussions with businesses, with many people actually in this room, will be the thing that unlocks the capability of this country to move forward at pace.
Fantastic. That's a perfect segue to actually asking some members of the audience to ask their questions that are perhaps more industry specific. So first, Mike Archer from AstraZeneca. Great. Can somebody bring him a microphone?
Yes, thank you, Mike Archer from AstraZeneca. We in the sector were delighted to see the report that was published earlier this week by Peter and by Wes for our sector. I think one of the really critical areas in there is about medicines manufacturing. We've seen a real decline in the UK over the last 10 years or so, particularly in our exports and the amount of investment that's been made in this critical area, an area that can provide massive amounts of additional jobs, huge amounts of GVA for local places across the country, exports, and of course, really critically, resilience in terms of medicines access for the NHS. What are Labour's ambitions around expanding and improving UK medicines manufacturing, and what else can industry do to help you develop those plans?
Well, the first thing is we've got to recognise that life sciences is a very important sector already, and I think will be crucial as we go forward. I see it as one of the areas, one of the sectors, if you like, that can drive forward the sort of growth that we need. And it's great to see you, because I think last time we were together was in Macclesfield, at your site up there, talking to some of your staff, and also recognising not just those that you directly employ, but all those that were feeding into the work that you were doing. And therefore, we do need a strategy. Pete and Wes were working on a strategy, very good report that we launched the other day. So we need a strategy. We need to, with you, work out what the challenges are as we go forward. And from our conversation, I took away a number of things. One is, and this will be across the room, I think, energy costs. For AstraZeneca, and I'm sure others in the same boat, the high energy costs are a real inhibitor. Because there wasn't a strategy, there wasn't a way of working with government quickly enough, getting trials and research cleared so that we could be in the race where others are. And I think there were examples given to me of work that we could have done here, a race we could have won here, but we lost to another country because we didn't take decisions quickly enough. So I think there's a huge amount that we can do in relation to life science planning as well, for the premises that you need. So there's an example of an industrial strategy that is at the national level, but also has the flexibility to work with the sector in relation to the specific demands. But they were big takeaways from me from our meeting. And this is the great thing actually about coming out and talking to people in this room and businesses in their place of work, because reading a briefing in Whitehall is one thing. Going to where you're doing your business, understanding it properly, having those discussions in Macclesfield is much more impactful. And for me, it's a way of working. On the way back on the train or wherever I'm getting back, I mull over what people have said to me. What's the challenge there then for the government? What are the things that we need to do to change? But I think there's a lot. But the final thing I'd say, actually, just on this, because welcome views, in relation to, with the vaccine, we obviously had a task force that went very fast to achieving an outcome. Obviously, it was an important situation, clear outcome. But that sense of a task force approach that goes across government departments, so that you're not knocking on this door one day, another door the next day, and nearly always with somebody else behind a desk under this government, that we can create a more dynamic way of actually delivering in government, I think, would sit above the various things I've mentioned already. Thank you.
Fantastic. So next, Tina McKenzie from the Federation of Small Business. Tina, are you about? Oh,
Tina.
Yeah,
there she
I'm here.
is. Great.
Thank you very much, Sir Keir, and I'd like to start by saying thank you for your team's engagement, Rachel and Johnny, with the Federation of Small Business over the last 12 months. It's been incredible. However, in saying that, we've heard a lot today about for UK PLC. We've talked about corporation tax and full expenses, etc. Haven't had really anything concrete for the SMEs, and as you know, that's 5.5 million votes for you. Wondered if you consider making a commitment to the SMEs around the things that they're asking for, are re-looking at the VAT threshold, looking at the employment allowance. They're having it very tough at the moment. You've already done work on business rates and on the payments, but some sort of more of a commitment in line with what you've just done for the big businesses.
Yeah, well, let me start by a shout out for our small businesses, because they're in many senses the backbone of everything that we do in this country. Many millions of people involved, fantastic businesses, and I've been to see some of these businesses, where it could be 100 people with a business that's been established, doing fantastic, innovative stuff, driving our country forward. Massive contribution to the economy, of course. Massive employer of people, and I think you're absolutely right to challenge, to say we've always got to have that in our minds, and there are plenty of things in our plan on small business. Late payment is a really important commitment. What we do about business rates is a really important commitment. I think there is further we can go. I think a lot of small businesses feel they're shut out sometimes of procurement and access to contracts, and I think that is something that we could change as well. So I do think there's a lot we can do for our small businesses, because they're at the sharp end, and I always bear in mind with small businesses that very often those running the business are not just putting their personal money in, their own private wealth, they're putting a bit of their own soul in, and they're taking quite big risks with the businesses that they are running, and that's why I think it's important that we have a government that supports them. So thank you for the question, thank you for the challenge, and we'll continue to work with you in relation to small businesses. Thank you.
So next we're going to take you to the property side. So Melanie Leach from the British Property Federation.
Thank you. Thank you, Sir Keir, for your speech for today, for the clarity of the business partnership plan, and of course from the property sector for the focus on building. Property is a sector that directly contributes over £137 billion each year to the economy, but beyond that we underpin all economic activity, from the critical infrastructure of our logistics and warehousing to homes and offices of all shapes and forms, to business premises that support life sciences and other fast-growing sectors, to retail, hospitality and leisure. And we think and invest for the long term. So my question, we've touched on the industrial strategy already, but my question is to ask whether you can say anything more about your own understanding of the importance of a national green industrial strategy. And the word green here is critical, I think, to a sector that accounts for 25% of the UK's carbon emissions, and is working really hard and investing hugely in bringing that down and tackling that challenge. But a national green industrial strategy with clarity and consistency of purpose, policy and regulation, which we've heard about from your colleagues already today, to sectors such as real estate, with billions of pounds more to invest, but choices about where to invest, and a backdrop of similar economic and social challenges, including building more homes, which is facing most countries across the world. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the question, and also the framing of the question, which brings alive the significance of the issues that you've raised. And going to that central question within what you ask, the green transition, the transition that we are on, particularly in relation to energy, to renewables, this is a transition that we have to make. We know we have to make it. Other countries across the world are making that transition. And there are two ways of looking at this. One is that it's a huge obligation that somehow is imposed on all of us and will inhibit the way we run our businesses, the way we run our country. Or the alternative, which is the way I look at it, which is this is probably the single biggest opportunity that we've been presented with for decades in relation to the next generation of jobs, the technology of the future. And my concern at the moment is that the race towards the new jobs of transition is on. That race isn't about to start and we're sort of limbering up. The race is already happening, and under this government we're back in the changing room. And other countries are already getting ahead of us. So I think we need to run towards the challenge. The key things, or amongst the key things, are exactly what you had in the body of your question, which is clarity, certainty and a strategic approach. And what we've had with this government is chopping and changing in relation to the strategy for transition. That won't work. And you've got to have a plan that takes you past the transition to what happens next. And there are brilliant initiatives across the country in relation to transition. But if you have a government that swaps the minister involved every 5 minutes, that says one thing in relation to targets one day and another thing in relation to targets the next day, then that inhibits the investment that needs to come in and the work towards the transition that I think that we can make. So for me, this transition is a huge opportunity. Next generation of jobs, absolutely, and for many years to come. When it comes to energy, lower energy bills, because if we make this transition, the price will go down. We will not be so exposed internationally to tyrants like Putin, who's at the moment being able to put his boot on our throat. So there are huge opportunities in this, but we have to have a strategy, we have to have certainty, and we have to stick to it when it's challenged. And when the government says in relation to the transition for cars, it'll be this day, that'll be that day, most businesses don't say to me, oh, the exact precise midnight hour is what matters to us. What they say is, once you've picked a date and you've got a strategy, stick to it, because we're already working to it. Don't then go and change it after the event. And that's why it's amongst the reasons that I want mission-driven government, this sense of a driving purpose that survives the sidewinds of government that very often knock governments off course. We're determined to avoid that. Thank you.
So now moving on, all of these ambitions do cost money, and so we need to hear from people who actually provide money into this economy. So Michael Moore from the British Private Equity and Venture Capital. Oh, there you are, right there in front. My goodness. Give that man a mic.
Thank you very much. May I say, Keir, that I was there in 2019. And in terms of business engagement, I think it's fair to say things have only got better, to coin a phrase. Your emphasis on partnership for growth, productivity, these are really important signals. We represent an industry with 12,000 businesses in the UK backed by private capital, 2 million jobs. 90% of the businesses are SMEs. They're all over all parts of the UK. It's a real trick to attract the international capital to the UK, to a globally competitive investment community, who then deploy that capital across the UK in different areas. The key, and it's been a theme of today, I'd just like your take on it, is that there's predictability, there's consistency in the policy framework, so that on the energy transition and AI, whatever it might be, people know that when they put the money to work today, in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, it's the same framework that will exist. How do you make that real?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of the central issues, and this has been deep in the conversations we've had in recent years, because almost every investor across the world says to me, Keir, we've got money to invest, we're just not investing it in the UK at the moment, because we don't see the conditions as the right conditions. There's too much chopping and changing. There isn't a long-term strategy. We can't, it is particularly for the opposition, it is politically funny to have 4 chancellors in 1 year, as we did the year before last, to have 4 budgets in 1 year. But for the economy, it's hopeless. For people looking in, wanting to invest, it's hopeless. To have a government that signs an international agreement, then pretends it's something else and tries to rip it up, isn't about sort of global Britain. That is a really bad indicator to the world about the stability of your country. So the opportunity, I hope, at the next election to reset that is hugely important, that stability. It's why Rachel is so focused on stability. I mean, many people think this is just about the sort of positioning as we go into an election. It isn't. It's about what we do the other side of the election as well, if we get that far, which is instilling that stability, making sure that the lessons we learnt the hard way under Liz Truss are never ever repeated again in this country, creating those conditions of stability. That's why fixing the corporation rate, being absolutely clear about the fiscal rules, and the fiscal rules come first. They override, so everybody knows what the priorities are. But having a strategy where you say, this isn't the strategy for the next 12 months, it's a strategy for the next 5 years, even 10 years. And sometimes people sort of blink when I say a decade of national renewal and sort of think, well, you haven't even won one election yet. And here you are saying a decade of national renewal. But we've got to be real about the stability that we need. It's got to be measured in years, not in months. And that's why I think the sort of roots we're putting down on stability are so important, because I think that is crucial to investment, because if we want investors to come up alongside our country, we have to show the leadership, the stability, the long-sightedness, and the commitment, again, to concepts like the rule of law. We have excellent judges in this country who, through their work, underpin the contracts that you all depend on. That is a very good thing. We should be making sure that we understand properly why those things matter in this country, and I genuinely hope that if we win the election, it's a reset moment for the country, where we can make clear that that stability matters for so many reasons, but not least because of the investment that I genuinely think it will attract into the country to allow the change that we need to happen at all and at a faster pace. Thank you, but it's such a central issue. I really appreciate the question.
So the one thread that unites everyone in this room, no matter where they come from or what they do, is technology. So your last question from the audience should come from Chloe McCune from Microsoft. Who is?
Chloe, over there.
There you are.
Sorry.
Thank you. So, like many companies here in this room, we had a good chat on our table about how to contribute in partnership to assure better economic growth. We're really hopeful in this era of AI and cloud, and wondering what your vision is, should you be fortunate enough to be in government. What's your vision, and how can you share how that cloud and AI adoption will help support that economic growth?
Well, I mean, thank you for that question, because AI is absolutely central as we go forward. And I think the first thing to make clear is my attitude, if you like, to AI, because I think people broadly fall into 2 camps. There's those that are fearful and want to try and put it back in its box, or those that say this is transformative and will be a real revolution that can do a huge amount of good. I'm in the second group, and therefore I want to embrace AI. I think we're in a good position in this country. We're second or third in the world. We've got Microsoft, we've got others, we've got Google, we've got incredible people here, I mean, working in technology, working on AI here in this country. So we've got a real head start. And I think that we've begun to set out the principles for regulation, or the framework, I should say, that we put around this. And it was somebody at Google who said to me, with AI, Keir, think of it as like a fork. said, you know, if you're trying to eat your dinner, a fork is quite a useful thing to have, but it can also be used to stab someone. So you don't prohibit the fork, you regulate what it's used for. And those that are at the leading edge of this, I think, are in that camp, which is let's get... And we can lead on the regulatory front, I think. We're in a position to do so. I thought it was good the Prime Minister convened a conference in the autumn of last year. I don't think we made the most of it, frankly. We would continue with that and make more of it, because I mean, there are so many examples, you all know them as well as I do, but, you know, the ability to use AI to transform the sort of detection rate for, I don't know, kidney cancer is absolutely incredible in terms of what can be done, and we're only in the foothills at the moment. So this is something we need to embrace, put a framework around it, but embrace it in the right spirit, because I think this is going to make a huge difference to all of our lives as we go forward. Certainly to my son, who's got ChatGPT on his phone already, which is very handy when he's doing his revision for his GCSEs. I'm not quite sure what to make of it. Other than it's really fascinating that for him this is second nature. For him this is already part of what he's growing up with. And I think that, again, is an indication of what a change this is going to make.
So we have to wrap this up, so I'm going to throw you one last question, which I think our audience will appreciate, because in corporate life we have this tradition when there's a new CEO, what do they do? What's the first 100 days like, where you put a print on the organization that you're making change? So let's imagine you as elected as our next Prime Minister. What are you going to do in your first 100 days? You've just taken me on a journey down memory lane, because when one of the changes I made in my own career was going from an individual barrister doing cases to heading up the Crown Prosecution Service, 7,000 staff, and I got exactly that, which is clear. You need to be clear about what you're going to do in the first 100 days, so I'm familiar with this. Look, I think there's a lot, obviously, that we need to do. We need a good, strong King's Speech, which sets out a different vision for the country. We need to get our missions embedded, and certainly the early stages need to be started. I think the most important thing that I want to get across in the first 100 days is the change in mindset, the change in approach. It will feel different. You will feel you're dealing with a different government that's going to operate in a different way. So rather than this piece of legislation or that piece of legislation, I think the first 100 days is about setting the relationship and like a breath of fresh air that we're in a different place now. We can do business and we can walk forward from here. I think that's the most important thing that I hope to achieve in the first 100 days. Again, knowing we've got to work really hard to get into that election and out of that election and do the hard yards of putting the positive case that we want to put before the country. Well, that brings our time to a close. It's been a privilege. One last round of applause for
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Thank you. See you, Ray.
We will now take a short 10-minute break. Additional refreshments are available upstairs in the Duchy Suite.